without further ado, we're going to go ahead and switch it over to Maisha.
Thank you. As Ardina said, my name is Maisha Azadi Sebastiani, and I am an artist, I'm an educator and a filmmaker. I've been doing this work upwards about 10 years now in many different capacities. And I really find that this, especially in the state and the climate of our society right now, it's very important to have these conversations in a way that will just move us forward, unite us, and be able to continue conversations, not just push us to different corners of our world. So today's presentation is really a condensed and consolidated piece on the science of microaggressions. It's a piece that I talk to organizations about and being able to offer language to lead. It's an acronym, and I'll get into it a little bit later, but really want to talk about the basis of microaggressions. What are they rooted in, and where do they come from? And before you can even look at microaggressions, and as Ardina said, yes, it is a form of racism, but because it's not as blatant and in your face as a number of other things, we have to kind of look at how they're formed. So the foundation of microaggressions is really bias, and looking at a specific type of bias, which is unconscious bias. So unconscious bias, or even implicit bias, really refers to the attitudes or the stereotypes that affect our understanding, our actions, our decisions in an unconscious manner. And these biases, they can encompass both favorable and unfavorable assessments. And they're activated involuntarily and without an individual's awareness or intentional control. This is a type of bias, we say it happens automatically. It's triggered by our brain making quick judgments and assessments of people and situations, and it's influenced by our background, cultural environment, and our personal experiences. In reality, these biases affect us in our decision making in a number of different ways. So we're going to look at it it affects our perception, how we see people, and how we perceive reality around us, our attitude, and how we react towards certain people, our behaviors, how receptive or how friendly we are to certain people, and our attention, how much, what aspects of a person are we paying attention to, our listening skills, how much are we really actively listening to them, and what certain people are saying. And of course, microaffirmations, how much or how little can we comfort certain people in certain situations. So those are the biases that are really the foundation of that term, microaggressions. Another aspect of them is that they're really hard to prove. They're hard to quantify, which makes it hard to take action on it. Oftentimes people don't perceive it as harmful. If you look at individuals, say for instance, with regards to the unintentional micro insults, it a lot of times is a person's efforts to offhandedly compliment or relate to another individual that causes the offended to not understand the offense. So a lot of times it's coming from a place where, oh, well, I'm meaning well. My intent is to say something positive. But that's where we always have to look at intent versus impact, and understand the impact of something has much higher priority than the intent. So what do? What are some tips, and what are some things that can help us navigate this? Well, first we have to understand, and when I do this workshop, this is against a consolidated version of it, but we have to understand that we have two conversations happening. But the first one is, we must understand we inherit racial biases of our forebears. None of us are immune to that. And we also live in a highly racialized society. What does that mean? That means that racialization, or an actual practice of seeing the attributes, qualities, both negative and positive, of another individual based on their race, has an impact on how we engage with one another? Or what have you used to truly assess this person? Is it personal engagement or previous experience? Does this person remind you of someone in your past or someone you have seen? Are there triggers that happen? So that's where the deep reflective work has to come in. Being, number one, aware of what's happening when you're engaging with different groups of people. Does what I have to say add value? What you have to say, does it add value? How is it really contributing to pushing the conversation or the agenda forward? Do I really need to say that? Might it be offensive? So those are the things around stop and thinking and really wanting to stop at the level of what's called the lower level of the ladder. For some time, I worked in leadership development, and one thing that we really shared was there's what's called a circle of learning. And the circle of learning is broken up into a few regions. It's the area that you know, YK. There's the area that you don't know, which is your YKDK. And then the largest part of you, if you think of the pie, the largest part or region is what's called what you don't know. And that's the DK. And for so many of us, we, I think, are conditioned to think that, well, we should always know so much. But to stay in a level of understanding and being vulnerable and wanting to learn from one another, you have to acknowledge that there's more that we don't know that we don't know. We just don't know that we don't know these things. And holding a posture that we can be able to be open and welcoming to that is important when we engage in this type of work. Secondly, instead of engaging in microaggressions, wanting to really engage from a point of microaffirmations and using statements that create a sense of belonging. Statements that honor and that value people and that welcome them into a conversation or welcome them into a process with you. Use statements that honor that person's lived experience and the value and the wisdom that they bring. And then thirdly, practicing cultural humility. Don't assume you know who people are. Put yourself in the position of a learner. Practice not knowing so that you're in a position of learning more about those who have lived experiences different than your own. So what else can we do? We can also engage in what I like to call an acronym for language to lead. And these are like some strategies and some tips. Or the first part were tips, these are more like some strategies. The language to lead is L, means to lean in and lay out the situation. E is explore the behavior objectively, describe and get clarification. A, address the impact, explain the impact and the implications. And D, simply just do differently. But these are just a few ideas just to help us navigate the terrain that is not mutually exclusive to one area. It spans education, it spans the justice system, the healthcare system, so many areas of our lives, professionally and personally. So I just definitely want to turn it back over to you. I'm open for any questions, but these are just some points and some things that I just like to talk about in those spaces that mean them.